We're spending 4 weeks thinking about giving. We can't outgive the giver. And you see this that Julia Swan has put together with all this money. This comes down into a painting that was painted for us about 9 years ago. It usually hangs out there, and it's the hands of Jesus. And this is just designed to encourage us to think about what we do with our money. Monday, I got up and I saw on our front lawn 500 prawn cocktails dumped on our front lawn. And that was just for starters. Come on! Radio 2, Tony Blackburn, keeps giving. And then Wednesday, I went for a row in a boat on the River Medway, really peaceful, and then all of a sudden this happened. Who'd have thought it, the River Medway? This is true. I've got a friend and he was going out on a date with a girl and I said to him, how did it go? And he said, oh, it didn't go that well. I said, why? He said, well, at the end of the meal, the bill came. He said, and when it was put down on the table, she just smiled and pushed it towards me. And I sighed, and got out my credit card and put it on the table. He said, she doesn't want to see me anymore. I said, I wonder why, Nick. Giving. Do we do it cheerfully? Joyfully? Why aren't we cheerful all the time in life? Some of us aren't cheerful because there are battles going on in our head every day. Mental health challenges that wage war from the moment we wake up to the moment we lay our head back on the pillow. Some of us aren't cheerful because there are wars waged with our neighbours or with our family. Why can't we just get on with those we gave birth to? Some of us aren't cheerful because of baggage we carry. The St. Bruce Springsteen said, the longer we carry our invisible baggage, the heavier it gets. And standing by a fairground in the middle of nowhere in America, in the age of about 32, he had a complete mental breakdown. Thought, I am at the top of the charts. I have everything. But what am I doing with my relationship with my dad? Why are we not cheerful? There was an article in Christianity Today a few months ago looking at the abuse of church leaders. It was written by a lady and she said, quite rightly, we take abuse of church members by church leaders absolutely seriously, and we should. But we don't seem to take abuse of church leaders as seriously at all in our churches, where church leaders regularly get abusive messages sent to them, where their theology is stripped down and mocked, where they are threatened with their jobs, their families are put in spotlights. One of the vicars wrote in and said to the lady, I just am scared to preach the gospel anymore in case it offends anyone and they complain. I know of a minister of a larger church. I was in an online meeting with him and he said, I am genuinely scared of what I say now because it might offend people in 20 years' time. Everything now is recorded and online. What if I stumble over a phrase that causes offence in 2 decades' time? I'm genuinely worried about what I say at the front. And so we have a generation of church leaders who are not cheerful because they're worried about what they say and what might happen afterwards. One lady, a poet, Jane Tonbridge, who was part of the civil rights movement in America, reflected that in the 1950s, 50s and 60s, she felt they were just too serious. She said, when we loved, we didn't love right. The mornings weren't funny and we lost too much sleep. I wish we could do it all again with clown hats on. What she went on to say after that poem was, I wish the movement reflected a bit more frivolity, a bit more beauty, a bit more stillness where we reflected on the joyfulness of following Jesus. As I said earlier with the pie, mash and beans, Noah was commentating at Maidstone yesterday. He did his first session a few weeks ago. The guy, Matt Easley, who heads up BBC Radio Kent sports commentary, invited Noah to come along just to see it. And when Noah got there, he said, "Oh, Noah, I've got a little surprise for you." And this man in his late 50s with a beard said, "You're going to commentate for the last 20 minutes of the game with me." And Matt Easley's face grinned and Noah's face fell and looked sick. The joy for Matt of giving a gift to Noah was palpable. He was like an excitable little child because he wanted to give something cheerfully. In 2 Corinthians 9, when Paul is asking the church in Corinth to give money to the church in Jerusalem because they need it for their mission to Jesus, he says this: "Remember this, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will also reap generously. Each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly," that in Greek means as though all giving were painful, "or under compulsion," which means because there seems to be no alternative or because pressure has been exerted. For God loves a cheerful, not grudging, giver. In Proverbs 11, it says, "One person gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly, but comes to poverty." A generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. And Paul is echoing, it seems, that proverb here. And he's basically saying to the church in Corinth, if you sow scantily, then you will receive scantily. If you sow plentifully, then you will receive a harvest that will be plentiful. Jesus said in Luke to the followers he had, "Give and it will be given to you. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." So plentifully, says Jesus. So plentifully, says the proverb. I found out a couple of weeks ago in my reading that the word sow in the parable of the sower, found in Matthew 13, Mark 4 and Luke 8, that word for sow means that you are sowing somewhere where there is definitely potential for growth. That transformed the parable of the sower for me, because I thought the parable of the sower was sow on stony ground, it's stuffed. Sow on shallow soil, it's stuffed. Sow amongst the weeds, it's stuffed. Sow on the good soil and it'll work. But what Jesus is saying in that parable is, if you are stony ground, if you are shallow soil, if you are soil drenched with weeds, there is still potential when God sows that crops will grow. That's how gracious God is. God doesn't wait until we are good soil and we've got it all together. God sows because he knows there's potential in every single person. You watching online at home because you're ashamed to come here on a Sunday morning because of what you think people will think of you. God sows in your life. Us who came in here reluctantly today, God sows in our life. Every single one of us, there is potential for growth. Is that not good news? In a world that picks on us and puts us down and points out what we don't do quite right, God cheerfully sows in our lives. And so invites us to do the same. Paul says, decide in your heart what you will give and then give it. Are you ever like me? I sometimes decide and then I start coming up with reasons why I shouldn't do it. It's not wise. It's not the right time. What if I need that money? We should put some away for a rainy day. What is this rainy day people talk about where we think, it's a rainy day, we need that money, go and get it out of the loft because it's raining and we need the cash. Murray Harris says, giving should result from inward resolve, not from impulsive or casual decision. I get that sometimes we see things on the news and we're moved and we give. We've given £1,000 from our relief fund away this weekend because of things that are going on around the world. It's a moved decision. But when it comes to regular giving, Paul says, think about it. Weigh it in your heart and then give. Can I ask you and me, when did you last think in your heart about how much money you give to Tonbridge Baptist Church? It's the problem of a direct debit, isn't it? You never have to think about it. It doesn't cut so much about thinking regularly about what we should give. If you haven't thought in your heart for a while about it, I encourage you to. And that might mean your giving goes up. It might mean it stays exactly the same. Or it might mean it goes down a bit because of where you're at in life. God just wants us to do it cheerfully, says Paul. Whatever we give. God approves of a cheerful giver because God is the cheerful giver. Walter Brueggemann said, a cheerful giver is one who gives in joy and without grudge or reluctance, thus reflective of God's own cheerful generosity. Our giving at church should not be a weapon through which we hold power. I heard of a church in America where a couple said to the minister, if you don't start doing the services the way we want them done, we are going to withhold our giving to the church financially. This is in a different culture where ministers know how much people give. And he went to the treasurer and said, these couple were really going on at him. And he said, how much do they give? He said, oh, they don't give anything. They've never given anything to the church financially. Just trying to hold it as a weapon. And what goes on over the pond goes on here, folks, as well. Where some people in churches can hold their money as a weapon. Do it the way I want it done, or I will withhold what I give. I love the generous people that don't be spotted obviously as generous people. There's a guy at my last church who was almost a millionaire and he looked like Columbo. It was a complete mess. You would have known that he was rolling in cash, and he was generous with it. He went abroad on a mission trip. Lady was living with her son in a garage. The son couldn't actually physically move, so she would roll him over, and his hips had gone down to the bone where he was just laying on a bed. And he said, oh, I might be in trouble with my wife. I didn't run it past her, but I bought him a flat for £65,000. Neil, can you help me broach it with my wife? No, get on with it yourself. It's above my pay grade. You would have known. I've got a friend who gave to Tonbridge Angels £10,000 3 years on the trot so that we could work with them. He said, can I give it through the church, pay the tax, but I just don't want people to know that it's me that's given it. Just like to give it and see what God does as it flutters off for his kingdom. Paul Sampley says, giving must not be marked by the slightest degree of reluctance because then it is not freely given. Giving is a delicate transaction. If you put it even the tiniest little string on the gift, then it is not truly a gift. Ernest Best said, cheerful giving is contrasted with reluctant and forced giving. Those who give out of self-interest to receive a reward here or hereafter are reluctant givers, for they act under an inner compulsion to seek their own good. There is not genuine joy, only cool and calculating self-concern. That was written in a commentary in the 1950s, I think. Times have not changed, have they? Gareth Allen really gets up my nose. He's our treasurer. He used to be chair of elders. Gets right on my nerves. I'll tell you why. It's not because of his lycra, when you see him in Co-op after he's been on a cycle ride in the frozen food aisle. I can cope with that. The reason he gets up my nose is that he's a cheerful giver. He always challenges me as a financial warrior when it comes to church things. And he grins at me when we have our meetings and says, let's trust God. Oh, right, Gareth. Let's trust God then. And he's been proved right. When I said to him, can I use that illustration? He came back to me and went, oh no, I don't want to appear naive or as if, I'm a bit simple about all these things. I thought, I'll leave it. Gareth's wise, he'd come round. Next day he texted me, he said, please share it. Because he wants to be a part of a church, and I believe he is, that is about cheerful giving. Can I ask you to stop giving to TBC financially if you're doing it in a calculating way to get some kind of influence? Can I ask you to stop giving to TBC if you're doing it reluctantly? Can I ask you to stop giving to TBC if you're doing it because it's a spiritual discipline? Can I ask you to stop giving to TBC because you just always have. Can I ask you to stop giving to TBC if you're trying to bend God's ear and get God on side? Can I ask you to stop giving to TBC if you want to have control and influence? Can I ask you to stop giving to TBC if you're doing it to try and get what you want because you believe in some kind of prosperity gospel where if we give to God, God gives back to us and everything's fluffy and cool? But if you're giving cheerfully with no strings, please keep giving. Please keep giving. Because it's absolutely amazing. At my first church, Joe and I were quite tight for cash, and one of the elders at the church there said to me once, "Neil, is there anything I could do for you?" And I said, "Michael, I would love a blank cheque." He came back to me the next week at church and he gave me a cheque and he said, "Neil, this isn't blank, it was £1,000, which 27 years ago, and even now for me, is a lot of money. You know, I can't give you a blank cheque, but I want to give you this." I caught him once. We were away on holiday, and when we got back, he was mowing our front lawn for us. We come back early. He went, "Oh, I wanted to do this as a surprise for you before you got back." I thought, "You naughty man, I'm going to give you that cheque back." No, I'm not. A cheerful giver. Leslie Newbegin, the missiologist, said, "A Christian community should be a body of people with gratitude to spare." We should have more money than we know what to do with so we can bless those around us. A church overflowing with gratitude is a cheerful church. We received this email to our food bank and to Emma, our community lead, a couple of weeks ago. A lady wrote and said, "I just wanted to say again, Emma, thank you so very much. It's been really difficult trying to provide for my son this holiday, being X years old and standing at X feet tall. I'm sure you can imagine trying to keep him fed. Your generosity has really moved me, and I feel so lucky to have had you there in that very moment. It made me emotional. You're my guardian angel. Thank you." We get messages like that probably almost every week from people in this community who see the generosity of you as you cheerfully give to make a difference with no strings attached at all. You're in a tough place. We've all been there. May we help you and bless you. Cheerful giving, you can't beat it. Let's watch this video together. That's great, isn't it? That's in the For Further Thoughts this week, I think. You can use that. Maybe share it with a friend and say, "Where did you see that?" So I saw it at church. Church is a cheerful place. You'd love to come along. Because, you know, most people think church is a really grumpy place. People that are coming here to weddings or funerals or Christmas, they say to me, "I am amazed by the quality of the music and by the joy of your people." They actually speak to me after the services and they have a smile. Not all the time, because we find life hard. But they welcome me. Last Sunday, I was walking on cloud nine after the morning service when you celebrated Joe and I and the family being here for 10 years. Andy Matheson, you did it brilliantly, didn't he? Yeah. Didn't he just pitch it right, and then you giving me the company car afterwards? Private jet for my international ministry was absolutely fabulous, so thank you so much for all of that. But I was cheerful. And you can see that Andy was cheerful. I just turned on the phone this morning and there were some messages from last week. Someone said, "On behalf of the youth, we want to say a massive thank you for all you've done, taught us and seen us as equals. So thank you and love you." And there's a couple of others as well there. And you sent me messages. They were just dripping through the day, thanking me. And your cheerfulness given to me lifted me and made me feel, wow, I'm really valued in this place. Let's continue to be cheerful givers in all that we do. Let's cheerfully give financially to our church, having reflected on it in our hearts and made a decision what to give.